You're listening to Solera Innovation Labs, where automotive experts from around the world discuss technology trends in mobility and debate tomorrow's rules of the road. Whether you're a technician, a dealer, an appraiser, a car lover, or anything in between, we'll discuss topics that will keep you up to date and help you and your business win.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Don's Drive-In. I'm your host, Don Mykrit, and today my guest is Kristen Felder from Collision Hub. And I'm really excited to talk to her because of her background, not only in the industry, what she's doing to cultivate our technicians for the future and educate everyone on how to fix cars properly. I think that's the big key here. And so we just wanted to make sure that everyone understands who we have on the show today, and looking forward to intellectual conversation about where this industry is really going and the events that we should be looking forward to as the car evolves into the next century, right, as things move forward. So, Kristen, welcome to the cast today.
I am excited to be here.
But, Kristen, why don't we let you introduce a little bit of yourself to our podcast, what you do, where you've been in the industry, and just the general background, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so I literally, and I can always say this, and I love to tell the story. I've been in this industry my entire life. My mom actually went into labor in the paint booth, had to knock on the door and tell my dad to stop painting. It was time to go to the hospital.
Well, it was like an incubator, right? Because it was on and it was warm.
Yeah, those days before respirators, though, and I'm paying the price for that. But,
all right.
But literally born into the business, and I have, in a way, I guess, eat, sleep, and breathe collision repair my entire life, and that's taken me in different places, whether it's in the shop or it's been to an insurance company, and then to the corporate level at an insurer, the training department. And then eventually in 2008, the Collision Hub. And that Collision Hub was just a desire to bring kind of all of those entities together to, as I so poignantly put the tsunami that was hitting the industry really at that time. In 2000, we were kind of raising the flag going, hey, guys, got to pay attention. The vehicle's really drastically changing. And to try to put things in a different bucket and take stuff online, because if I can't get the information in front of the actual technician touching the car, then it doesn't really matter how good or how I present that information if no one's getting that information. So we took it online and took it social, and here we are roughly 10 years later, and we're hitting about 1.5 million people a month and about 40 different countries, and we're producing content in about 6 languages right now. So
that's awesome.
It grew. Yeah.
It is. And look, for the viewers or the listeners, one of the things that's unique about what you've done is you actually have your own facility that is a full-blown collision repair center, right? Yeah. We can do everything here, except we don't fix cars for money, so we don't touch a customer's vehicle, but everything from body to structure to calibration to refinish to there's 10,000 square feet of, we call it studio here, where we can do or recreate any process or test any piece of equipment. We do a lot of that, equipment testing for different, or procedure testing for different people. And that's one of the cool things about it is that you guys continue to work with the vendors and the manufacturers. So as they introduce new technologies, they bring them to you so that you can show your viewers and your followers where things are changing and how they're changing to make the industry better. Is that fair?
Yep. Yeah. So sometimes it's just a matter of playing with it first and going, hey, this isn't going to work, or it's not quite right yet, and then sometimes it's okay, here's how we're going to take it to the industry. Here's how it's going to go to market, because this is the way it's got to be explained. We had a bad problem in this industry of coming up with really great processes or equipment, and then just taking it to market and then not understanding why the market didn't adopt it.
It's the challenge of how to utilize that equipment properly in the flow of the modern shop, right? Because sometimes it's just not designed to be productive.
Yeah, well, and ultimately, I may sell, the purchaser or something may end up being the shop owner, but the true adopter is going to be the technician, and we just weren't doing a really good job of speaking.
That's true. To the tech.
And that goes back. I even put on my insurance hat and go back to the days of corporate. We would come up with really great ideas, but we probably didn't do a great idea of taking that to the field and implementing it, and so we caused ourselves a lot of headaches, and it's the same in the body shop.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And we're going to talk a lot about this. I think one of the things that's interesting, Kristen, I'm going to spin for a second because I know that one of your most favorite vehicles in the world happens to be a Corvette, right?
Yes.
So one of the things that I want to bring up, and it was out there in the news, and it was just something that's out there. I'm a Corvette fan. Have you seen the new 2020 body style and this mid-engine, super sexy, sleek looking car?
I've got to take a look at it. I've got to have my hands on it. So I'm pretty excited and good timing because I think I told you last time you were down here. My uncle retired from Corvette as the manager of the paint department. He started with them in St. Louis, went to Bowling Green. He's actually in town this week. So I was getting nervous when he's here because I feel like my Corvette game's got to be on point. And he came in loaded with discussion points around that car. So it's a big week around here for us.
Well, it is a big week. And I think, interestingly, you and I should just go ahead and tell them to order 2 cars for us. Because look, starts under $60K. Right?
I know. Yeah. But I got to hold back, though. The tradition in me is just like, can I adopt it? Because I'm a traditionalist and I'm an American muscle fanatic.
Yeah, but
so
the only thing I don't like is they don't offer a manual transmission.
That was an interesting occurrence. When that I really didn't think that was. I'd heard about it, but I really thought, how can you not have a manual option in a Corvette? But again, that was another little step that they took, and it's a beautiful car, and I love the look and the features and the interior, the way they designed it. I feel like I'm in a Learjet sitting in that thing.
Oh, I know. Let's get a couple ordered. I need the dark blue though. Dark blue is my color.
Yeah, I think, don't I need to do some research on what the collision repair on those are going to run?
Let's do that. We should get a couple of those so that we can bring them into the studio and take them apart and figure out how to fix them right.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Done deal. Done.
One of the things we're going to do real quick is just kind of talk about a couple of bullet points, some unique things in the industry that are going on, some news that's been out there. So CCG, if you guys aren't familiar with them, Certified Collision Group have just announced a new CEO moving in. Because of the size and where they want to go and cultivate. My understanding is, Kristen, and you may know this, that I think they're saying today that there's the 3rd or 4th largest group when it comes to a network group closing in on 1.6 or 1.5 billion in revenue.
Yeah, they're rapidly growing.
Which is kind of another point in the news that hasn't really talked a lot about is the fact of Calibra coming together and what that looks like for the industry and the coverage. So I think that's kind of some things we can talk about, Kristen, that are somewhat exciting. The other thing that's interesting in the news to point out, and I think these are things that we'll talk about throughout the cast, is how blockchain is kind of changing the way insurers and shops kind of look at the industry. And so we started talking a little bit back when one of our competitors is introducing blockchain into their solution. But what we're seeing is USAA building out something for subrogation, and it's being leveraged by State Farm, or at least being tested by State Farm. So, Kristen, are you familiar with that at all? It's something that's been popped up and articulated out in the industry, something we can talk about later.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. The other thing, Kristen, that I thought was unique is Carfax. For some reason, as I think of Carfax, I always think of Carfax as a group that going to tell you the maintenance and service, and when I go buy a car, was it in a wreck and those kind of things. But they've announced their total loss solution. Did you hear about this?
Yeah. Actually, I was kind of surprised as well to see them entering that market.
Yeah, and it's funny. So we did a little research ourselves, and they say they've been in the market for quite some time, believe it or not, in the total loss, which I struggled to even know that it existed. But they're really pushing it out there because they say they can get down to VIN-specific total loss evaluations, as opposed to the way the industry kind of looks at it today, where it's within the same general geographic territory with the same similar features, and they kind of take an average, right? So you can really get down to the specific VIN and the history of that car. That's really kind of changing the industry, isn't it?
I got a lot of thoughts on that just because of some other. If you go back and look historically over the last year and a half, some other stories around Carfax that have hit the market, it brings to mind how are they going to effectively handle total losses.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And so the last one, and I try to put five data points or so out there as far as some things in the news, is kind of iCar announcing well over a year ago the new curriculum and how they're going to move forward. The new systems that they have out in place to kind of track the technicians and what have you. And there's been some delays to that. So I think as they try to work through the IT side of things, so to me, that's kind of new. And, I don't know where you feel. Essentially, you're kind of in the same vacuum, if you will. right?
Yeah.
In the same business. It's interesting to take a look at this group and where they're at in this technology play, because there's a lot to it today where I think the old school days, Kristen, of going in the classroom, right? Those are gone. More of it's online. It's hosted, similar to a lot of stuff you've been doing for years. And so it's interesting to see the delays that they have, and what impact does it have on a number of shops that they have today. I think there's somewhere around 7,600 gold class shops that are out there and growing. And so this is some interesting news that's out there. But there's a lot of things that we're seeing happen, right? There's a talk about autonomous vehicles. And right, the first scare when that came out was, oh my God, we're going to have no cars to fix. Right? What's going to happen? We have nothing to fix. They're not going to run into each other, right? But it's really kind of evolved to where it is today with ADAS, the pre and post scanning, and then the evolution of it. Because look, one of the things that I'm very familiar with, right? I came back from having 28 collision repair centers, and you and I worked together for many, many years. But I remember the introduction of airbags in the steering wheel. And then you had to get everything, the clock spring, you had to take it to the dealer. And today it's the self-diagnostic system. And so as we see this huge push towards the scanning, do we start to see the evolution of these vehicles moving to the fact of self-calibration? And look, self-calibration may mean that they have to be driven for 50 miles before that calibrates. And, what kind of complexity? So what do you see that's kind of driving this industry where we can improve and opportunities when it comes to ADAS? I want to kind of go down that path for a minute, because I know you're an expert in this area.
Yeah. Wow, that's a lot of pressure there, Don. Thanks. But I will say this: one of the things that's driven me lately, and partially to the new hire that Collision have just made, was that this was an area I felt very inadequate in. I mean, so I'm good with, I'm good with the seals and the welding and all the things that was traditionally collision repair, and then all of these electronics come along, and I start feeling like I don't quite have the knowledge level I need to be at. So I added a team member that had spent several years and a lot of time in this. And it's a little scary because, in a way, I think we have to admit this isn't new. This is something that goes back to that 2000 to 2005 when it started to really hit repair procedures. But, in the collision repair industry, we weren't necessarily paying attention on the mechanical side, so to speak.
Right.
And we kind of lost track of the ball a little bit, and then the OEMs decided to bring it back to our attention about 10 years ago with position statements, and we were kind of like, what do we do now, right?
Yeah.
So we realized that we had kind of always been lacking. So it wasn't like we were already playing catch up in a way. It wasn't like this was a new development that we had a couple of years to plan for. We were already behind the eight ball. So we weren't scanning, so we definitely weren't calibrating properly.
No.
And then when we would, in all fairness, when our shops would seek assistance at dealerships, even the service departments weren't ready and educated and trained for this as well. So we kind of surprised the service departments. It's not uncommon. You hear a shop go, I drove it to the dealer, and the dealer told me I was crazy. So,
yeah. I don't think the dealerships even today are as prepared enough to service the entire collision market. I think there are some that are really good. Yeah. But there's a lot that still don't play in that spape, right?
No,
it's tough for the repair.
And if you think about the square footage that it takes to do calibration properly, that would take up almost 4 service bays at a typical dealership, and it would take up, as many as a typical body shop. And so that's a lot of square footage to give up, do something that in a way you're like, well, the car's driving. What's your problem, Kristen?
It runs.
Yeah, and so there's all of this, around it, and then it gets to be complicated. I mean, we just did an experiment with Honda, and we took a mirror, a passenger mirror off of an 18 Accord, and following all the operations we were supposed to do, we ended up with like a $3,500 estimate on a $200 mirror.
Wow.
And it was just, following word for word. And then, I can understand where, gosh, that's a lot to have to pay for. It's a lot to try to figure out how to set premium appropriately for. That's a lot for a repairer to have to decide. I just thought I was replacing a mirror and painting it and having it out of here on same day repair, right? So I think we're all kind of overwhelmed, and so the ADAS is really just completely kind of overwhelmed. And in a way, I think it's fair to say it's paralyzed us a little bit right now, while everybody tries to decide what to do.
Yeah, and I think more and more are getting into the scanning side of it. But now, herein lies another question for you. All right, I bought a scanner. I got an aftermarket scanner, right? The aftermarket scan tools are very, very good. However, there are specific modules on certain insurers that or certain manufacturers that you can't scan, right? Because that port, that OBD2 port, is legislated for only specific information. Do we start to see legislation come out or be lobbied about privacy and access to modules on these vehicles so they can be repaired properly? What's your thoughts there?
I think for years, probably the last 50 years, if you look back at collision repair, we all kind of stood up at CICs and everywhere we went and said, please don't let the federal government get involved in collision repair. And then now I think we're begging, please let the federal government get involved in collision repair.
Yeah.
Just because in all, I want to say fairness, and if you followed along online, I've started a few discussions. I might call them arguments. But we're not really getting straight answers. The OEs will approve some tools, but not others, but won't explain why. That's very confusing to me as a repairer. Why is one aftermarket tool okay, but then now suddenly it's not? So we had one OE approve an aftermarket tool, and a year later changed their mind. And I'm all for research and further investigation, but I would just really like to know what happened and why. But we never get those answers.
Do you think it has anything to do with data sharing? So, for example, and I say that because some of these aftermarket solutions that are out there need to go, and they're buying data. They're buying the information to be able to put in the scan solution. And they may have been under contract with them, and then for some reason, for one reason or another, they're not paying the fees, so they're not getting access to the data, so now they're decertified as a tool. Do you see that being a potential? Because, look, by law, they have to share the data, but it doesn't mean that it's for free. Right, that's one of the things that's out there.
Yeah, I think it really comes down. I've had a couple meetings with some OEs that have explained to me how they use scan data. So why it's important that their cars are communicating with an OE tool and how they use that to improve vehicle performance. Get ahead of recall or service issues. They're getting that data off those cars and using them. And when we take those cars to aftermarket scan tools, we remove that form of research. And I totally understand that. We have one tool in the marketplace that people allege does not pay for any data to anybody, but, still works or whatever.
How are you getting the data, right? That's the interesting side of it.
Yeah. So
you're taking it from someone, right?
When you sit down, you really, I can't imagine, and I guess I can because I talk to shops all the time, how confusing it is, right? You have a salesman standing in front of you telling you that their scan tool scans it all. You have an OE telling you that that's not true. And then you have one particular pass-through tool may be approved over another, but they allegedly do the same thing. And we haven't on our side of the fence in the collision industry had a neutral third party who's an expert in this service of scanning really kind of tell us what's going on. And so I think we've all been hoping ICAR kind of comes to the forefront and helps us sort that out. But typically when you go to an industry event, the people standing in front of you telling you that everything's okay are also the people selling you a tool.
Yeah.
And what's that old adage? Never take advice on how to collect money from somebody that owes you money. So I want to believe the guys that are up there because I think they're fantastic people, but there's a part of me that just goes, I would just really like a straight answer. As a repairer, how do I know that the tool I've bought is doing the right thing? How do I know that I'm putting the car back on the road safe?
Well, I think that's a huge opportunity for the industry today is not only the pre and post scanning and the calibration and the diagnostics, but it's what tool, when, where, why. And there's no set answer. No different than I think. And you may be getting it. I know we get some of these questions from insurers about time because no one publishes what it takes to do the calibration because every calibration is different, right? And they're looking for us as the IP group to say, here's what it takes to do a calibration on this car, on this module. However, to do every vehicle and every module and all, it's just mind-numbing to think about.
Yeah. Right? I have the benefit and the privilege of being able to research a singular repair for hours or days. that happens. But the normal repairer or even an insurer doesn't have that privilege.
No.
I don't know that there'll ever be a way that we would be able to put times to it. And part of that is this discussion we have to start having about, has damage analysis changed completely? Because even just something as simple as time studies on a quarter panel, because of all the other stuff that has to go along with the sensors and the calibrations and whatever, that simple repair process that used to be simple 15 years ago isn't. And so can I even estimate the way I used to, or do we have to start?
The answer is no.
Yeah.
We have to look at it differently because, look, as well as anyone else, it's the shock wave of the vehicle. I mean, no one thinks about the shock wave of the vehicle was crumple zones, right? This is where it's going to bend. Today, not only is it where it bends, but it's how it absorbs the shock throughout the rest of the car. So you can have a front end hit that my quarter panel and my door gaps aren't correct anymore because of that ripple. And the old traditional estimatics would never go back and look at the quarter and a front end hit, right?
Yeah,
unless it was so bad, right?
Then throw in 120 something different processors that are, now in the car. If you just sit in a chair, I love to do this demonstration, especially when insurers come through. If you're just sitting in a chair and your phone drops out of your pocket, that's a 5 mile an hour impact. And I think all of us, when our phone drops out of our pocket and bounces on the tile floor or whatever, the first thing we do is we panic and we hit it and we hope, please come on, right? Because if our cell phones crash, our whole life's over, right?
Right.
Now take that up, 3 steps, drop it again, and now you're at like a 30 mile an hour collision. Okay, does your phone survive? And most people go, probably not. The glass would break, it wouldn't turn on, it wouldn't do a lot of things. Okay, your car's a rolling computer. So even if I have just a minor hit to a bumper or a fender, and all of that force goes through the car, I'm now looking at 120 different cell phones.
Oh, yeah.
120 different processors.
But the other thing that's interesting about that, and you're absolutely 100% right, but the other thing that's interesting is think about it from being the person in the car. Mm-hmm. In the old days, and we do have an aging population, right? So we remember when it was pre-crumple zone kind of stuff. But when you hit something at 5 miles an hour, 10 miles an hour, you felt it, right? You could feel a 10 mile an hour impact. Today, you can hit something at 30 miles an hour, and the person inside the car, because of the way they're designed, you don't really feel it. You feel it, man, I really barely hit them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
how many often do you hear that? I barely hit them.
Well, and I think part of that, too, when we visually see cars, and I've walked into a lot of facilities, or I get involved in a lot of disputes, really, whether it's right to appraisal or something else is going on. And when you look at the car, it doesn't look that bad, right? The bumpers will take impact and reform themselves in a way. And then you start pulling the data on the car and realize that the accident was at 15 miles an hour, but it looks okay. Because we designed the cars to take impact better than they ever did before. And so I think a lot of us still look at cars from that old perspective and we go, the damage doesn't look that bad. Why, Kristen, would I need to do all of this electronic work for just a bumper cover? And we have to kind of retrain ourselves to go, well, the car channeled that energy completely different. And we've got to do a lot of extra work.
Yeah, and it depends on that year, and that, there's a complexity, right? As a technician, I get that, 2020, let's just say I got a 2019 coming in or 2018, and the way it's designed versus a 2012, right? Or 2000. There's a tremendous difference in the architecture of those vehicles. It may look the same somewhat, but the architecture is completely different, right? With that impact and the ripple, if you will, through the vehicle. So it's kind of interesting. I want to ask you another question. I'm going to kind of pivot a little bit because we're talking about ADAS and those things, but I was talking to a shop the other day, and they're talking about a new position that Nissan has. And I don't know if you're familiar with this or not, but they're talking about Nissan saying that any time one of their vehicles is in a wreck, that the steering column needs to be taken out and it needs to be remeasured.
Yeah.
Which basically means that I've taken apart your dash, because it's not an easy thing to take that thing in and out.
Yeah, so it's not necessarily new. Nissan's kind of had that position out there for a while. I think it's one of those things that's been newly discovered. Okay. As people have started to pay attention to it. And part of the reason is on those steering columns, and Chrysler has a very similar position statement around steering columns, is there's just a bunch of little plastic bushings in there. And you can't tell necessarily whether those are damaged. And so if there's been some sort of, I guess what they're trying to classify as an impact, hey, check those bushings because they can break. They are small.
Got it.
And they're critical. It's a great explanation from Nissan on why you have to do it, but it still hurts your soul to think about having to disassemble a vehicle.
Well, and there lies the thing. I mean, look, I remember a day when my shop, I told this story to the shop too. Is that, you know, I had I think it was a Honda Accord. Regardless, it was hitting the rear, and we had to it needed a rail. There was no sectioning procedure. You had to go all the way into the package tray, put the rail in, right? But you ordered the replacement rail, and the 1 year newer, same exact body style. They didn't change the body style. The OEMs put out the sectioning procedure for the rail. And when you bought the new rail, it shows you where to section it, right? So, of course, you dealt with the insurance company and blah, 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 blah. My point being is that do I want to start to cut apart a car and all the factory seals? So it's the same. You ask that question, do I pull apart this dash, right? Do I take this thing out because it could potentially be there? Or is this a flaw in the way of designing the car with these plastic bushings?
But, you know, I think we could go back to Nissan and go, hey, design something, you know, different in a way. But then it goes back to we want the cars lighter because they're the cafe scooters and whatever. And then we go back to some ADAS. So really the ADAS of today is the autonomous vehicle of tomorrow. So when you think about, I normally get in these discussions around steering gears and, you know, BMW and, hey, if this happens, or I think even Audi and Mercedes both, if you got any moderate impact, you're putting new gear in the thing. And of course, no one likes that. That's a $5,000 part and a bunch of labor.
But you don't see it, and you don't see it happening. I guess that's the other point is that positions out there in the steering column, but how many times are you seeing anyone write MRI in the steering column because of the front impact?
No, but
I mean, the insurance company look at you and go, you're crazy.
If we go back 12 to 15 years in Chrysler always has a position statement: the driver's side airbag deployed, replace the steering column. If we went back and pulled parts data and looked at how many airbags had sold versus steering columns, we'd probably all want to, you know, go home and cry. Well, we have horribly, as an industry, insurer and repairer, I think we have to admit, we weren't paying attention. OEM position statements are not, hey, guys, we'd like to remind you something. When an OEM has to take the time to write a position statement, it's like, hey, you guys need to pay attention to this because you've been historically missing this.
Yeah. Well, and so there's a school of thought that's out there, right? You talk to insurers or shops and just the industry in general and say, hey, are position statements designed to sell more parts? Right? Because look, at one point in time, you know this, the dealerships got away from having their own repair centers because it was just cost, right? Doing collision is just cost. I throw all my marketing dollars. I don't need it. And they got away from them. But what they found in the last probably 10 years or so, really since the Great Depression that we've had here, right, 2008, is that there's a lot of margin in parts. And if I do this right and get in wholesale parts, holy cow.
Yeah, right? If I go back and think of just my career, and so I got into insurance in 1995 was when I decided to join that side of the fence. And the numbers really haven't changed over the years. Still, 80-something% of part usage has always been OEM parts. So I don't think we changed position statements to sell more parts. But the cars have gotten more complicated and with more reasoning. So steering gears and steering columns and all that stuff is big deals. I mean, your lane departure systems, corrective steering, those kind of things all drive off of those components. So, the OEM has an extreme interest in making sure that those parts have no questions around them after a collision. I mean, that's their liability as well as the repairs.
Right. So Kristen, and look, we've talked about a lot of really, I mean, we could go for hours on this stuff. And so we probably got about 10 or 15 minutes left in our session today. And one of the things I wanted to make sure we talked about is something that's just one of your passions. Passion is really about education. I think it's interesting when we think about education in our industry, and you and I share, I think, this same common view, is that so much is focused around the estimator and so much is focused around a shop and their KPIs, not necessarily the technician, right? And we forget about the person, the guy or gal who's fixing the car, that we put our family in, right? And so when you look at collision number, what you've done, yes, you do classes on estimatics, you do classes on proper repair and how do you leverage this equipment and what have you. But your passion is really about that technician, truly understanding how to fix a car. Am I right here?
Yes. I mean, they're driving everybody's safety.
And so when you look at our industry and the education side and the biggest challenge that's out there, talk for a second about what you've done to address it. You mentioned early in your little intro about the number of people you've trained and what's going on, but talk more specifically about who you're training and how you're getting that message and information out to the technicians.
Yeah, so the training touches really everybody. We made a commitment to try to touch as many technicians as possible, and that's why we took it to social. Technicians, specifically even painters, because that was my job, my role as painter. We are tribal by nature. We seek each other out. We seek approval and discussion with our peers. While we may appear, the lone painter in the paint shop may appear to be kind of a loner, we are, in a way, very ego-driven with our work and our quality, and so we seek that out online. So we took small, adjustable amounts of training and took it into that online, whether it was YouTube or Facebook or Instagram, putting it in front of the technician. And then our first marketing message was really more about you don't know what you don't know, and bringing together different viewpoints from, one may be an extremely left viewpoint, one may be an extremely right in the industry and seeing it differently, but putting all those different personalities together on a singular show and somewhat internally debating that repair process. But that drew an audience, whether you agreed with us or you didn't agree with us. The best thing was you were just involved in the conversation. So that really drew the technicians in, and then we found that really started to make a difference. The more digestible and on-demand type, training that we made available, or little nuggets here and there, things that they could go share with each other, and then evolved that into live feeds that shops could do lunch and learns around, where they could buy pizza for everybody, and one day a month everybody could watch us live and send us their questions or text us or do whatever. But we found that making that technician feel not so alone, really kind of has helped raise a bar in a conversation. Are we where we need to be now? But that one tech that's out in the middle of nowhere that, maybe that shop's not involved in a DRP, and so therefore ICAR Gold and that training isn't important to that repair facility, we can still get them a little bit of knowledge, knowing there's a better way.
Sure.
There's a new way of doing
it. So. It's funny you say that, because one of the things, we own obviously many different solutions in our portfolio, and one of them is called IATN, and it's really in the automotive mechanical space, and it's a network of both paid and unpaid subscriptions. I think there's over 80,000 technicians in it today, and it's exactly what you're saying. They can post the question, get some response, right? I think it's not just the painters that feel that way. I think it's the body man. I think it's the mechanic. I think they're all in that situation. Is how do I handle a certain situation? How do I go do this? Because let's face it, we talk about repair procedures. We talk about scanning. Look, there's not an answer for everything. There's not a position statement on every aspect of the car, because every car's not hit the same, right? There's not a repair procedure that says do every, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I mean, I still to this day, I will answer this phone another 3 times a day, and someone will ask me something, and I'll go, yeah, I don't know. Maybe look into that when I get back. I mean, so there's just some questions, but then there's always that one strange hit or that one happen, and we learn from each other. We respect each other. I mean, no one wants to go to a class where the person teaching you the class you don't feel can do your job, so to speak.
Right.
Now,
I think that's true. The tech in any one of the automotive side of the sectors of the industry, they need that support and that help. And I think what we don't realize is that technician, when they're fixing the car, be it mechanical, be it glass, be it collision, they're the only one really touching the car at the time. Just imagine going to your garage and you're all by yourself with the radio on, fixing the car, and if you don't have the answer, yes, there's some things to go to, but sometimes there's no answers when you go there. So what do you go do? I think it's interesting because there's one insurer that opened up their own R&D research center called TechCore for a multitude of reasons, right? To take a look at how do you start to fix things that aren't there. But Kristen, I want to talk about one other thing here as we start to get close to wrapping up that you do as well. And it's not just the technician side of the house, and it's not ADOS and just all that stuff, but it's also taking a look at some groups like 3M, who provide a lot of unique adhesives and other products in the industry that you've worked with them to help educate the industry about what those products do and why. I mean, I know there's Fuser and there's other groups out there too, right? So, let's call everyone out and give them props to those things. But you spend a lot of time with those guys to help show where they should be. For example, I put a quarter on. This is where you weld. This is where you glue. Here's the glues you use. Why do you glue? Because it helps with corrosion. What do you do with the wands, right? I mean, talk a little bit about your work with 3M.
Yeah. So, and then like you said, I mean, we have RSG, which is kind of a conglomerate of, Norton, Fuser, and if it's that's the collision industry, it comes through here. And part of the thing with 3M and everybody else that comes through is convincing them that their knowledge, not really their product, is their greatest asset to the industry. So, you make great products, but the brains and the knowledge that you've collected, at corporate or wherever it is really the greatest thing you can offer the industry. And so, 3M's done a great job of it. We've done multiple, live industry nights where we'll host at different jobbers across the country, and they'll come in here to our studio and we'll live broadcast out to all those different locations. And it's a way of, every industry, everywhere you go, there's always one trainer who's just a step above everybody else that knows more. When I was in the insurance, I could think, I'm going to call it, he's with PPG now, but Bob Medved was an amazing trainer, and everywhere he went, I mean, everybody got it. And so he was kind of the trainer you wanted to be. Well, we couldn't send Bob everywhere.
Right.
Back in those days, that would have been too much plane tickets and whatever. But technology has allowed us to take that one really great knowledge base and let the entire, country share from them, or even the world learn from them. And so we're working hard to do that. We did the first one was on corrosion protection. The second one we just did was on adhesives, seam sealers, and foam, learning, the why and the history of where adhesives were and where they are now. And we hope as we have that conversation, we can take care of some of the old myths, some of that old tribal learning. When you went to the shop, said you were a new technician, you were 19 years old, and Bob, the tech that had been doing it 30 years, was telling you, don't listen to any of that new stuff. Here's how we're going to do it. And we believe Bob because he'd been doing it for 30 years.
That's why I like going to young doctors and not old doctors.
Yeah.
The young ones know the new procedures, right?
So if we can have these conversations, if you're a new tech in a shop and you don't ever get to go anywhere and you're always exposed to Bob, how do we bring new knowledge to you to start new conversations? Well, technology will let us do it. It's amazing.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, Kristen, let's do a couple things as we wrap up here. First of all, I want to thank you for your time today because it's been awesome. And you and I could probably continue talking about all these things for hours. And I don't know if that's really going to be exciting to the people that are listening to us or they're going to be thirsting for more. But what I would say is this, is that one, it's a pleasure. And two, I'd love to invite you back to have some more in-depth conversations as we start to dig into some of the other things that we're doing with our solutions and how we partner together with the industry. So that's number one. Two, but the other thing, Kristen, tell our viewers or listeners, how can they get more information about what you do? Tell us what site to go to or where to go.
So it's collisionhub.com. And then you can also find us everywhere social media chats are happening. So if that's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or YouTube, you just type in Collision Hub, and you're gonna find us. And then throughout the year, we will do seminars across the country. So we're actually getting ready to head to Hawaii next month. We'll be out there for a week. Then we'll be in Chicago, California, and we're coming to Dallas at the end of the year to spend a week in Dallas teaching seminars.
But when you're in Chicago, I think I should just be like a guest, I just kind of celebrity guest that comes in, right?
Come on in.
Because I'm right here in Chicago. I'll just jump in.
Chicago's going to be a fantastic class. So we've got the Select Training Center, and we're going to be talking about fixtures.
Chambers. And
some awesome things there. So we have our live trainings, and then we do online seminars as well. So how
often are you doing your online seminars? Is that once a month you're doing them? Are you doing a couple of months?
Yeah, every month you can register. We're really going to start talking about documentation processes and kind of some of the new world order for shops to start learning. There's a lot of, whether it's data share or we look at the new laws coming out in California, shops have more responsibility than just getting an authorization to repair sign. So we'll be teaching those online seminars about some different things in the world of repair. And I can't fix cars the same way I used to fix them 50 years ago, but I also can't process business the same way I did 50 years ago either. So
yeah. Well, look, I mean, Kristen, we have a passion at Solera for training and educating. And me personally, I'm a coach. So I coach hockey, and I'm all about that. I come from a family of educators. As we get close to here, this conclusion, I'd say, what would you have as an advice for the young technician getting into the industry? What kind of advice do you give them? What do you say to that person?
Yeah, I would say really start considering what your specialization is going to be by finding your passion. Whether you're a structural tech or you really not just some calibration, but the day of being a jack of many is kind of over. That was me. I had many skills and I could do everything in the shop, but I'm not really beneficial anymore with those skill sets. So start thinking about what your passion is specifically, and then seeking those roles, because that's
seeking those roles in the shop as the shop starts to specialize more in those kind of things.
Yep.
Yeah, no, it's great advice. And if you were to kind of wrap up with the emerging technologies and something a shop should be cognizant of today, if they're not looking at it today, Kristen, what's your thought? Hey, shop, you guys got to be looking at this. What is that one thing that you think this industry is maybe not paying as close enough attention to that they need to get into from a technology standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, scanning and calibration is huge. But if we back up a second and think about it, I tell every shop to really do an honest gut check on what your capabilities really are and really aren't.
When you say capabilities, we talk about frame repair, you talk about...
there's frame repair, there's welding. I mean, they say aluminum welding alone requires 8 hours a week of practice, 4 hours for steel. Well, how many of us have 8 hours a week to just practice? That's not fixing on a car, right? We don't practice on customers' cars. But if we really dive into what our capabilities, strengths, and weaknesses are...
Wait a minute, we can't practice on customers' cars, but when I go to the doctor, they're practicing.
Right? I'm not. I got an intern working on my knee right now, right? So, but we really have to think about it. I mean, it's not these advanced techniques that are really making problems. It's even the basics of measuring. It's the basics of understanding a structural repair plan. The industry has moved so fast, and then we've tried to move so fast with it. We've lost the basics in a way.
Yeah.
And if we don't have those, we can't do anything else. So I always tell shops, just start with a really true, honest evaluation of your people, your skill set, what tools and equipment you have. I have a lot of shops ask me, well, I only have to worry about OEM requirements if I'm going to be OEM certified. And it's like, no, not really.
No.
OEM requirements are the minimum viabilities of repair. So if you don't meet a particular OE's minimum viability, then you probably shouldn't be fixing any other cars. So we have to look, and most shops look at me like, well, I never thought of it that right. You're exactly right. If I don't have a particular whatever. So I think we have a general back to basics need that we need to get to, and we are going to get specialization. So it's time to start thinking about it.
Awesome. Well, Kristen, again, thank you for your time. And I want to be sure for everyone listening to tune into our next episode of the Solera Innovation Labs. I'm Don Micret, and I want to say thanks to everyone for listening today. Thank you.
Solera Innovation Labs is a podcast produced by Solera, a global leader in data-driven solutions and services. Solera collects and translates complex data into actionable insights for automotive, identity, and property partners across 90 countries and counting. Learn more at Solera.com or find us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram.